The winter of 1944 wrapped itself around East Germany like a cold iron fist, and the world was collapsing under the weight of a war no one could understand anymore. Snow fell endlessly over the ruins of Winterfort Outpost, a half-broken military station where shadows whispered louder than soldiers. Deep inside this crumbling fortress, a young German woman named Lise Adler was dragged through the frozen corridors, her boots leaving faint trails in the falling snow. She was a communications officer, sharp-minded, reserved, and painfully loyal to a country that had given her nothing but duty and silence. The door slammed behind her as she was pushed into a dimly lit interrogation chamber. A single lamp hung low, flickering like it was breathing its last. Lisa stood quietly, her breath trembling in the cold air as she waited for the room to swallow her. A storm raged outside, but inside the room, a different storm brewed, one that had no mercy, no warmth, and no place for hope. The officers who stepped inside carried an authority forged not from honor, but from fear. They questioned her again and again, chasing secrets she did not possess. Each time she answered with calm defiance, something inside her grew stronger, even as the world outside grew darker. Days blurred together inside the stone walls. The cold became a second skin, the silence a companion. Sometimes she heard distant explosions and wondered how close the front lines had crept. Sometimes she heard footsteps and wondered if they were coming for her. But most of the time, she heard nothing. Only her own heartbeat, steady but tired, fighting to keep its rhythm alive. In the isolation cell, she would sit against the wall and trace tiny cracks with her fingers, imagining the stories hidden inside them. She thought of her mother's garden in Stuttgart, the sound of church bells on Sunday mornings, the warmth of life before uniforms and orders. Memory became her escape, her rebellion, her quiet form of survival. One night, when the wind outside screamed like the ghost of the war itself, the prison power failed. The lights flickered and went dark, plunging Winterfort into eerie silence. Torches were lit in the hallways, casting trembling shadows that danced across the walls. Lise's cell door creaked open, not fully, but just enough. She didn't know whether it was a mistake or a test. Her pulse quickened, beating loud enough to echo inside her skull. For a moment, she hesitated, her fingers hovering near the cold bars. Then she stepped forward into the darkness, guided only by the faint orange glow of a distant torch. As she moved deeper into the corridor, the entire fortress seemed to hold its breath. Every step felt heavier, every sound louder. She heard voices approaching and pressed herself against the wall, closing her eyes and praying the shadows would protect her. The officers walked past without noticing. Their boots clattered like drumbeats of fate. Lisa waited until the echoes faded, then continued toward the outer hallway. The cold air seeping through the cracks told her she was close to the exit, close to freedom, close to life again. But the moment she pushed open the final door, she found herself standing in the courtyard. Surrounded, their torches formed a circle of burning light around her, and their faces carried a mixture of disappointment, exhaustion, and grim inevitability. She did not run. She did not plead. She stood tall, the snow falling gently on her hair, as if the winter itself was trying to protect her. One of the officers stepped forward and asked her why she tried to escape when she knew she would be caught. Her answer was a soft whisper carried by the wind. Because even a caged bird must try to fly when the sky opens. There was no anger in their eyes, only the heavy understanding that war had turned everyone into something they were not meant to be. They escorted her back inside, their steps slow, almost reluctant, as though they knew she had already suffered more than any punishment could measure. Inside her cell once again, Lisa wrapped her arms around herself and breathed quietly. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the broken world in a soft blanket of white, trying to hide the scars the war had carved into its surface. In the darkness, she realized something profound. They could take her freedom, they could bury her voice in silence, but they could not take away her will. Her inner fire that refused to die even in the coldest winter. And so she waited, not for rescue, not for forgiveness, but for the day history itself would tell her story. The story of a woman who endured, who resisted, and who remained unbroken in a world designed to crush her.